I can't help but shudder every time I think about that night, the night when Sarah and I stumbled upon the carnival that never was. It all started with a casual search for something to do on Halloween night. We weren't looking for trouble, just a little excitement to celebrate the spookiest night of the year. As we walked the dimly lit streets, we caught a glimpse of vibrant lights, beckoning us from afar. A carnival. Its bright colors and inviting atmosphere seemed like the perfect choice. The ticket taker, a man with a sinister grin and eyes that seemed to pierce through our souls, handed us each a glass of some odd, glowing drink. The eerie, unnatural hue of the liquid sent a shiver down my spine, and I exchanged a puzzled look with Sarah. But curiosity got the better of us, and we took the drinks anyway, dismissing our unease as mere paranoia. Inside, the carnival was alive with energy. People laughed, kids shrieked with delight, and the attractions promised a night of fun and thrills. But things took an eerie turn when I tried to check the time on my watch, and it was stopped at midnight. Sarah's phone was also unresponsive, its screen blank. We assumed they had died, but there was something chilling about the way the lights cast sinister shadows across the carnival grounds. We wandered further into the maze of attractions, our worries temporarily forgotten. The House of Mirrors stood before us, its entrance adorned with a sign that read, "Step inside and lose yourself," an invitation to adventure, or so we thought. Inside, the mirrors played tricks on our eyes, distorting our reflections in bizarre ways. It was all in good fun, or so it seemed at first, but then as we ventured deeper, I noticed something strange. Our reflections weren't just distorted, they seemed to be changing, evolving into monstrous, nightmarish versions of ourselves. I watched in horror as the grotesque images in the mirrors grinned and sneered, taunting us with their twisted grins. The eerie moans and distant shrieks grew louder, echoing through the maze. The air grew heavy with an oppressive, malevolent energy that made my skin crawl. I could feel a sense of unease seeping into my bones. Sarah and I exchanged anxious glances as the atmosphere shifted from excitement to dread. Panicked, I tried to smash the mirrors to escape, but my actions only led to more twisting hallways filled with more mirrors. It was as if the carnival itself was toying with us, drawing us deeper into its web of illusions and terror. The reflections in the mirrors seemed to multiply, a legion of distorted, nightmarish versions of ourselves closing in on us from all sides. Sarah was on the verge of a panic attack. I held her close, trying to comfort her, but it was as if an unnatural force held us in place, like invisible hands were clamping down on our shoulders, preventing us from escaping the nightmarish maze. The reflections of our tormentors grew closer, their misshapen faces contorted with malice. Time seemed to blur, and I don't know how long we stood there. The eerie moans and shrieks continued, growing louder and more menacing with each passing moment. It was as if the carnival was alive, feeding on our fear and tormenting us. I could see the terror in Sarah's eyes, and I knew that we were trapped, our only companions, the grotesque reflections that leered at us from the mirrors. We felt paralyzed, unable to escape the carnival's malevolent grip. It was as if time had lost all meaning. I fell asleep, still holding on to Sarah, feeling the weight of the unnatural force bearing down on us. It was a restless slumber filled with nightmares, and I awoke with a start, my heart pounding in my chest. When I awoke, it was inexplicably daylight. The carnival, the House of Mirrors, and the sinister moans were gone. It was as if they had never existed. But the horror of that night had left its mark on us, a chilling memory that still haunts our every thought. To this day, I can't explain what happened at the carnival that never was. It's a tale I've shared with only a few, and even now I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there the carnival is waiting, ready to ensnare its next unsuspecting victims. It's a nightmare that continues to haunt my every waking moment, a sinister reflection of a Halloween night that should have been filled with fun and thrills, but instead turned into a living nightmare. October 31st, 9:45 p.m. I was making my way through the crisp, moonlit streets, each footstep echoing in the stillness of the night. My friends were gathered at a Halloween costume party, impatiently waiting for me to finally show up after I'd told them I was 5 minutes away for the 10th time. My path was illuminated by the eerie glow of jack-o'-lanterns, casting long shadows across the sidewalk, and I couldn't help but smile at the excitement in the air. As I walked, an unexpected sight brought me to a sudden halt. A few feet ahead, beneath the flickering glow of a lamppost, sat a young boy, no older than 10, with tears streaming down his painted, ghostly face. He clutched a worn Halloween candy bag, an unopened Snickers bar lying beside him. "Hey there, what's wrong, buddy?" I asked, my concern overtaking my hurry to get to the party. The boy sniffled and looked up at me with watery eyes. "I've never been trick-or-treating before," he said in a small, trembling voice, his costume a pale imitation of the holiday spirit around us. His words caught me off guard. Here he was, fully dressed up, yet he'd never experienced the joy of Halloween traditions. It seemed peculiar, but his distress was genuine, and I couldn't leave him alone in the dark like this. I knelt beside him and offered a reassuring smile. "Well, it's never too late to start. How about you come with me?" The boy's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope, and he eagerly grabbed his candy bag. As we began our quest for treats, he chatted about his fascination with Halloween, the costumes, and the candy. He explained how he'd always watched other kids from his window but had never been allowed to join in the fun himself, not since his brother went trick-or-treating and never came back. "What?" I try to pry further, but he clams up. It was a sad tale, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for him. I kept thinking, what kind of parents would wait till their kid was 10 for trick-or-treating? And why would they send him alone for his first time? It bugged me all night. I'd never want to be a parent like that. Our impromptu trick-or-treating adventure continued, and the boy's initial hesitance transformed into pure excitement. He greeted each candy giver with a cheerful trick-or-treat and held out his bag eagerly, his ghostly costume billowing in the night breeze. But then he would look confused, reel in his bag, and give me a sad stare. It was like he was asking me to take the candy for him. It didn't make sense, but eventually I did, putting the candy in a plastic bag I had in my back pocket. His face lit up again, and he did a little clap. It was like that for the entire night. We'd find a house, cheerfully yell "trick or treat," he'd stick out his bag and then reel it in. He always did it as if he forgot, wearing that soul-crushing look on his face. I'd collect the candy for him, and then we'd go to the curb, counting what he had. He clapped his hands and jumped with joy. I've never seen anyone so excited, and it made me excited too. I never thought I would enjoy trick-or-treating as a 20-year-old, but this kid makes it fun. I love doing it with him. Maybe I'll take him again next year, I thought. But as the evening progressed, things started to take an unsettling turn. I checked my watch, eager to gauge how much time we had left before I had to head to the party. However, my watch had stopped at 11:59 p.m., and when I pulled out my phone to check the time, the screen was blank, devoid of any information. I tried to power it on, but it remained lifeless, like a cold, inert slab of metal. I dismissed it as a technical glitch and turned my attention back to our eerie adventure. The streets were nearly empty now, the once jubilant Halloween revelers having retreated to their homes. It was as though the town had been swallowed by silence, and the spectral pallor of the moon only accentuated the eerie feeling that had settled over us. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. There was something off about this neighborhood, something that defied explanation. But the boy was unfazed, his innocent joy unwavering, and I couldn't bring myself to voice my concerns. As we turned a corner and entered a dimly lit cul-de-sac, my heart sank. The houses looked abandoned, their windows boarded up, and their yards overgrown with twisted weeds. The boy stopped before one of the houses, its windows black as pitch, and pointed toward the door. "This is my home." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. This couldn't be his home. It was nothing but a decaying relic devoid of life. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice shaking. He nodded, his eyes still filled with childlike hope. "Thank you for taking me trick-or-treating. You should head back to your party now. I'll be fine." I hesitated, torn between my growing unease and my concern for the boy. I couldn't leave him here, alone in this desolate place. With a forced smile, I said, "No way. I'll walk you to your door. Make sure you get inside okay." Maybe his parents were bad at decor, I thought, or poor maybe. I tried to rationalize it any way I could. We climbed the creaking steps of the decrepit house, the boy leading the way. He pushed open the door, and I braced myself for what I might find inside. But as we crossed the threshold, my blood ran cold. The interior of the house was nothing but darkness, an abyss that seemed to swallow all light. It was as though the very concept of a home had been devoured by the void. I turned to the boy, my voice trembling. "This isn't right. We should get out of here." But when I glanced at him, he was gone, disappeared into the inky blackness. Panic clawed at me as I stumbled back onto the porch. I fumbled for my phone and dialed my friend's number. When he picked up, his voice was filled with annoyance as he asked where I was. I explained the situation, how I couldn't find the boy's home, and how he'd vanished into thin air. My friend chuckled, thinking I was playing a Halloween prank. But when I insisted it was real, the laughter drained from his voice. "Send me your location. I'll come and get you," he said. But there was no way I was going to stand around waiting in this creepy neighborhood. I ran as fast as I could and never stopped running until I saw bright lights. I never thought a corn maze could be so sinister, not on Halloween night. It was meant to be a thrilling adventure, but now my heart pounds like a drum, and each breath comes out jagged and harsh. My own labored breathing, the only sound I hear amidst the rustling corn stalks. The night started with laughter and bold claims as my friends and I dared each other to enter the labyrinthine nightmare. A corn maze, they said, had claimed the bravest souls. Piece of cake, I thought, chuckling as we entered. The corn taller than our heads, casting eerie shadows in the faint moonlight. That's when it began, or at least that's when I first noticed it. The distant sound of laughter. But not the warm, friendly laughter that resonates through a crowd at a Halloween party. No, this was a haunting cackle, chilling and grotesque, echoing through the maze's twists and turns, just out of reach. As we ventured deeper, I heard it again, now closer, closer, until I could feel the icy tendrils of dread gripping my spine. The laughter was accompanied by the rustle of footsteps, heavy and erratic, moving through the corn like a shadowy predator. That's when I saw it, a figure lurking in the maze, a scarecrow with a grotesque, tattered costume. My feet froze as my mind screamed, "Get out! Run!" But it was like my body had other plans. It moved me deeper into the maze, lured by morbid curiosity, my heart racing, my thoughts a chaotic mess. My friends noticed it too, their faces painted with dread. We tried to double back, but the corn walls seemed to shift, closing the path behind us. Trapped, we were nothing but playthings for this nightmare in a scarecrow's disguise. As the laughter drew nearer, I couldn't help but notice the absurdity of the situation. I was in a corn maze, pursued by a scarecrow, on Halloween night. It was the stuff of cheesy horror movies, right? This couldn't be real, but the sheer malevolence in the scarecrow's eyes, the glint of madness, was all too real. The laughter grew louder, and panic seized me. The scarecrow was toying with us, knowing we were trapped, hunted. Our flashlight beams cast eerie, shifting shadows, distorting the monstrous figure approaching. My friends kept mumbling, "It's just a prank," trying to convince themselves that it was all a sick joke. But I knew better. The chase through the maze was relentless. We darted through dead ends, were herded into loops, and all the while, the scarecrow cackled and chuckled, each sound sending shivers down my spine. Time seemed to stretch, and the world outside the corn maze ceased to exist. It was just us and the scarecrow, playing a nightmarish game of cat and mouse. I couldn't shake the feeling that the scarecrow wasn't just seeking a scare, it wanted something more, something darker. Its presence felt suffocating, a malevolence that invaded my very soul. I felt like prey, and the maze, our cruel captor. Suddenly, the maze opened into a small clearing, the moon casting eerie light on the scene. My friends were scattered, some huddled in fear, others trying to flee. But the scarecrow had me in its sights, and it was closing in. Every breath, every heartbeat felt louder than the last. Time seemed to slow, and I was acutely aware of the corn rustling in the wind, the cold sweat on my skin, and the sinister grin on the scarecrow's face. It was like a predator toying with its prey before the final pounce. In a desperate burst of energy, I darted into a narrow pathway, my heart pounding, the scarecrow's laughter hot on my heels. I could feel its breath on my neck, its cold fingers reaching out to grab me. But I couldn't let it catch me. I couldn't be another victim, another laugh in its twisted game. The corn maze seemed endless, an eternal labyrinth, but I couldn't afford to give up. My friends were nowhere in sight, their fate a cruel mystery. I had to escape, had to survive this nightmarish Halloween hell. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The corn walls opened up, and I stumbled out of the maze, gasping for air. The night air was crisp and cool, the distant laughter of the scarecrow now replaced by the sounds of my friends calling out to me. I tried to explain, to warn them about the scarecrow, but my words were jumbled, incoherent. They couldn't see it, couldn't hear it. It was as if the corn maze had swallowed all evidence of the horror that had transpired. I left the maze that night, my heart heavy with the knowledge that something malevolent had watched me from the shadows, a sinister scarecrow in a maze of terror. And as I glanced back one final time, the corn maze stood tall and imposing, a sentinel of nightmares, daring anyone to enter its labyrinth and horrors.